Discuss language shift and multilingualism in Sydney with reference to examples from your reading and further study. In order to answer this question, we investigated areas within Sydney which were overly populated by a specific language community. We have visited the following suburbs: Cabramatta, Liverpool and Leichhardt, where multiple language communities co-live with one another. Let's first define the key terms mentioned in the research question: language shift and multilingualism. As quoted by Kemp in 2009, a multilingual is a person who has the ability to use 3 or more languages, either separately or in various degrees of code mixing. Moving on, what is meant by language shift? As defined by Fishman in 1964, language shift is concerned with the relationship between change in habitual language use and ongoing psychological, social, or cultural processes when populations differing in language are in contact with each other. As a language dies and gets taken over by another language, the speakers of the dying language gradually becomes less proficient. There are many factors as to how language shift may occur and what influences the people in order to adapt to the new environment. Being able to speak fluent English in any country has been portrayed as a sign of successful integration.
Well, my nationality is Italian and my background is Italian, of course.
Well, my nationality is Australian, but my background is Italian.
Chinese. Sometimes. What's the other language that you speak? English?
What's the other language besides English that you speak?
Chicha.
They don't speak English at all. Okay, so that's interesting. So you grew up then speaking English. So where did you learn the English language?
Kindergarten? Or more often brother. Off TV and stuff.
I was born. I'm Fijian Indian. At home?
Yeah,
Hindi.
Hindi with your parents?
Yeah.
Except we mix languages in English, so we go to code switching. We say things in English. The conversation goes in Croatian or Slovenian. Then we switch to English or the opposite way.
The first few years has been quite tough. But I really wanted to integrate in this country, so I pushed myself a little bit, and now it's quite good actually.
Yeah, I would say so, yeah. Actually, probably it probably was a little bit harder for me to learn English.
For me, of course, it's Italian, because I can express myself much better.
I think Italian's the sort of the default language that we go to.
Even when it's like serious talks as well?
Yeah, there's a combination of both.
Oh, okay.
I try to use more Italian with her so she doesn't lose the language, which is important for me.
It kind of depends how naughty she is. So Italian if she's naughty, English otherwise.
Yeah.
Teach them both because I think it's important that they know their background and English so they're comfortable in society.
Okay.
Yes, yeah. Like there is so many many people with Italian background.
So you
and
feel a sense of community.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, so that's why my mom doesn't speak English.
Yeah,
So
she lives there too.
Yeah, so she survives around here quite easily. Because
Yeah, we do still have a lot of friends and relatives in Italy, so we stay in touch with them quite often. We do some jokes. We use our dialect, which I'm coming from Veneto, is Trevigiano.
We're almost bilingual. If we're with each other, we'll be speaking Slovenian or Croatian. But if there are other people like you, then my parents will switch to English.
We've observed that there are many reasons and factors as to why people in Sydney speak more than one language, the standardised language in Australia, which is English. Here's what we found from our research. One of these is that people speak their mother language as well as English because the area in which they live has a well-established community where their mother language is used daily. People move to communities in which others of the same culture live because it helps them cope with their recent migration, as stated by Klein and Kip, and adapt into a new environment. This also reinforces their sense of cultural identity. We've observed that migrants whose first language isn't English did not necessarily force their children to speak their native language. Interestingly, multilingualism occurred naturally in the home. Children would try to equally use both of the languages they were exposed to. English needs to be acquired so their children can function and succeed in the community, hence English being the national language in Australia. In contrast, their mother language should be maintained at home, as Forrest stated, as this crucially influences the individual to maintain his or her cultural ties with their family.
In two of our interviews, we've noticed that these persons used code switching. The first interviewee would speak a unique Chinese dialect, only in a private setting and only with his mother. Otherwise, he'd use English in all other environments. Whereas our other interviewee's parents were from Croatia and Slovenia. Their conversations, still in a private setting, would start off in Croatian, then switch to Slovenian. Sometimes English would be mixed in as well. This is explained by Ferguson as a key feature of diglossia, which is the function. We've discovered through the same interviewee, whose parents' marriage is an intra-ethnic one of these languages was superior to the other. That being, Croatian was superior to Slovenian. As his father's native language is Croatian, this was used more than his mother's native language, Slovenian. This is supported by Klein, where maintenance of the second language in an intra-ethnic marriage is negligible. Lastly, in our last interview, the male interviewee stated that he would switch from English to Italian when scolding his daughter. This is an example of metaphorical switching, where Holmes and Wilson state that this is done so the speaker can better express himself to the listener.